Hello, BookTube. I once again noticed that I had a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff piling up to talk to you about, and rather than make 10 videos, rather than have another 6-video day, since I was certain that the YouTube authorities were going to knock on my door and say, "Sir, you're abusing the privilege." So I thought, rather than do that, I thought I would lump them together and make another MegaStuff video, which is sort of my version of the portmanteau style videos that are fairly popular and that I love. I absolutely love watching. A booktuber that I've come to really like watching, when they just sit down and talk to me about a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff that's on their mind, I think that's fantastic. So I want to do the same thing, and I'm going to arrange this once again in rungs of interest. So we'll start with the outside world. And the outside world, the only story that I could pay any attention to the last few days is India. Is the state of COVID-19 in India. People, film footage, just mercilessly documentary film footage of people bawling their eyes out outside of hospitals as their elderly relatives die simply because there are no basic resources. The hospitals are completely overrun. They're completely broken down with a completely vertical surge of COVID-19. And it's like many experts have said, if this is what it looks like in the hospitals in the cities, just imagine what it looks like in the more rural areas. It's been on my mind, not only because I used to live in India for a time, and it was near and dear to me. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience with wonderful people, but also because this is the nightmare scenario that we have been dealing with the whole time with COVID-19. Not so much the virus itself. Right? The virus itself is not an apocalyptic. I know that seems counterintuitive to say, but it's not. It doesn't survive in sunlight. It's not particularly communicable. And it tends to afflict, in huge majority, the elderly and people already sick, people who already have persistent comorbidities. Everyone else who gets it, I know that the mainstream media doesn't like to talk this way, but everyone else who gets it mostly experiences mild to severe flu symptoms for a few days. The reporting around its severity, I think, does a long-term disservice to everybody, because a virus is certainly coming that is easily communicable and that has dire physical effects to everyone who contracts it, instead of a small minority. But one way or another, it wasn't the virus that we were always talking about, the background worry, the worry lurking in the background here all along for over a year now. Hasn't been the virus. It's been that the virus would cause hospital services to break down, that they would become overloaded and would no longer be able to treat anyone for anything. Certainly that was true in a couple of urban locations here in the United States at the peak of COVID-19, where elective surgeries of all kinds, cancer treatments of all kinds, were just being postponed, sometimes at risk to their recipients. And India is now presenting a horrible on-site scenario of what that would be like and what it's going to be like. Because if this is what it's like now, what's it going to be like in 2 weeks? So the world has plenty of world news to vie with that. I naturally, being a product of the Cold War, I always look at when Russia is saber rattling on the borders of a country it would like to conquer. Naturally, that gets my attention, but India wins hands down for that in a contest that nobody wants to win. And then if we get to the United States, this is my second attempt to make this video. I'm going to try to keep my composure, but it's not easy. It's not easy at all with this story. Of course, American news captivated the eye of the whole world just recently when a police officer named Derek Chauvin was convicted on all counts of murdering George Floyd, which happened over a year ago and sparked a worldwide wave of protests against not only systemic racism but police brutality. I myself just channeled my inner South Boston Irish and assumed that Chauvin would get a slap on the wrist, that he would hide behind the so-called blue wall and qualified immunity and simply not get punished. I was amazed that the judge handed down the verdicts that did get handed down, just a whole raft of verdicts that would, if they were enforced, keep this guy in prison for the rest of his life. He would die in prison. When I first saw that footage, all those months ago, I was outraged, came here to this channel. I was so outraged, so enraged by what I saw that I even got George Floyd's name wrong in the course of that video. I flipped his names, as I tend to do with people who have two first names. But one way or another, no one's ever going to get his name wrong now. And the thing that I said at the time in that video was one thing above all others that I was sure of, having watched the video a million times, but also having been out in the world, including places far away from the law. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt when I watched that video that Derek Chauvin had killed people before. There's no way to hide it in the face. No way to hide the infrared hatred coming out from an allegedly calm countenance. And I thought that might yield to trouble. I had no idea it would reshape the world. I had no idea that it would cause the kinds of seismic social reactions that it did. But when Derek Chauvin was convicted, so that even if he successfully appeals, no matter what, he is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And when that happened, I maybe naively thought that it would cause some sort of change. Now, in between when Derek Chauvin stood trial and now, American cops have killed a great number of people. But at the very least, I thought that exact same thing would be less likely to happen. The exact same thing. Murdering, yes. Killing people, yes. But not asphyxiating someone on camera in a calm manner. That, I thought, we would finally see the end of that. If for no other reason than that cops all over the country would say, well, we aren't protected anymore. This guy had years with the force, and he's never going to see daylight again as a free man. So it could happen to me, so I won't do it anymore. At the very least, I thought that. And that is not true. that is not true. In footage that you may start to see, I don't know if this will go viral the way George Floyd did, but there was a man named Mario Gonzalez who was standing there in California minding his own business. May have been a little intoxicated, may have been a little mentally impaired. One way or another, the police decided to pick a fight with him. And they were wearing body cams. They were wearing cameras that were filming everything they did, and they didn't turn those cameras off because they had probably been told by their supervisors that if you turn your body camera off during your shift, it is an admission of guilt, and you will at least draw an administrative reprimand, if not be fired. You cannot do that. If you turn your body camera off, it's because you don't want us to see what you're doing, and that is an awareness of guilt, so don't do it. One way or another, these cops kept their body cams on as they get closer and closer to Mario Gonzalez, and then, we just want to talk to you. Could you come with us? What's going on here? And then they start laying their hands on him, and he is talking the whole time, and he's no more sympathetic, a snap judgment visual image than George Floyd was. He's got the gang hat all the way down to his eyes, and then a little below them. It is a little bit incomprehensible, so maybe a little more than a little drunk. One way or another, the cops start strong-arming him. He starts resisting. The cameras are rolling the whole time as they get him down onto the ground, handcuff him, and then kneel on his neck. And he is talking to them the whole time. First saying, I didn't do anything, or wait, I need to check on something, or all the sorts of things you say when you're panicked and you don't know what to do. Then he starts yelling and complaining. And then, very clearly as you watch the film footage, he starts to lose the ability to enunciate and is just gargling in agony as he slowly asphyxiates. If you keep somebody overweight, flat on their face, with a head twisted to a 95-degree angle, even if you're not kneeling on them, they're going to start to asphyxiate. If you are kneeling on them and constantly rubbing their face in the ground and they're agitated anyway, it is certainly going to happen. And it does. It does. And the footage is damning, just as damning as Derek Chauvin, only in a different way. With Chauvin, you are looking into the eyes of a murderer. You know perfectly well what subsequently turned out to be true, which that he had killed many other people while he was allegedly serving and protecting them. These cops, no vibe like that at all. Instead, it's even worse. In some ways, it's even worse. It's even more Orwellian, where they're being very reasonable tone. They're trying not to get agitated. They're talking calmly with each other. They're talking calmly with Mario. as he's responding to them, and then they just keep right on talking calmly with him as he is starting to gargle in agony, and then stop talking because he can't anymore. They just keep right on doing it, saying a tactic that they learn in their training is when you have a suspect who's the slightest bit combative, what you want to do, in addition to, you want to do a maneuver. You want to bring up trivialities. What day is this? Who's president? When were you born? Do you know what street this is? What are you doing today? Like the weather? That sort of thing. Which has two purposes tactically. One is to distract the subject from the fact that you are gaining tactical superiority. You don't want them to feel that because that might cause them to panic. So the first reason is to distract them. And the second reason is to calm them down. If you get them simply reciting normal stuff, you might diffuse the situation by making them realize, you know, this is a bad interaction, but it's not the end of the world. In Mario Gonzalez's case, it turned out to be the end of the world, and long before, the cops just kept doing that. He's flat on his face on the dirt with one of them kneeling on top of him. He is obviously having trouble breathing, and the cop's saying, "What's your birthday, Mario? How you doing, Mario?" In a very studiously normal, cheerful voice. Now, I'm sure that the cop was trained to use that voice, and not to yell, and not to sound agitated, but in the context of the video, it's horrifying. And if that's horrifying, the moment when one of the cops, in that same chirpy, you know, servant of the public voice says, "We're going to take care of you," to a man who is obviously dying at your hands. That moment, if any of this is known to the mainstream press, if they pick up on it, if it goes viral, that moment will be the moment that makes the populace go wild, realizing that it isn't a question of Derek Chauvin, and it isn't a question of a few bad apples. It's that if you are not white, it's open season on you, and that's the last thing you'll hear. "What's your birthday, Mario?" While he's going, "Ah, ah, ah." It was infuriating to watch. I'm going to talk about it here, but I am absolutely not going to leave a clip of the video for you. If you want to hunt it down, you will know ahead of time what you're getting. I don't have so much stake in content warnings or trigger warnings, but after the year we've all been through, I wouldn't blame you at all if you didn't want to go and look at that video. I have a suspicion that you're going to be hearing about it anyway. I have a suspicion that this may be this year's George Floyd. As horrible as that is to think of, that we're now dealing with these things on a progression line, I honestly thought it wouldn't happen. I thought the one thing that wouldn't happen is for cops to do the exact same thing while on camera. It's just infuriating. Mario Gonzalez was not doing anything that deserved execution. And in the full text of the video, if you're not watching a clip version, you'll see him standing there at the beginning of the video. And he seems a little bit unsteady. Maybe he's a little bit drunk, maybe a little bit dodgy. And you think that for a fraction of a second, and then you realize, okay, but I'm watching him in the last minutes of his life, and he doesn't know that. And I'm not sure that it doesn't, like I said, I'm not sure that it doesn't make things 10 times worse, that the cops involved here are obviously human beings. Derek Chauvin was not. He was just a stone-cold psychopathic murderer. I knew that the minute I saw that footage, because I've seen that look before, and a couple of times in very dark corners of Iran and the Amazon rainforest, directed at me, where I know, okay, you're not just the local bar loudmouth. You've killed people before. And you get to recognize it. If you're ever in a powerless situation like that, whether you're out wandering alone or whether you're in law enforcement, you get to know that look. I'm not sure that this isn't worse, because these cops are nice guys. Killing someone. Anyway, that's the United States. There are plenty of other things going on in this country, but that wins by a wide mile. And I don't know what to think. If the populace picks up on this, another cold-blooded execution, I don't know what to think. One way or another, we're just going to move on. We're just going to move on from there to YouTube just in general. Unfortunately, with YouTube just in general, I don't have anything much better to report. We are getting to nicer stuff, I promise. Stuff that isn't just doom and gloom. Because that's not what these MegaStuff videos are going to be. When you talk about just YouTube, we'll talk about someone I've mentioned before on this channel, not only for his wonderful videos, but for his good books. He's also a very talented author. I don't know if we're ever going to see another book about or by him, because he's pretty obviously going to be Prime Minister of the UK, and that might not leave him time for writing. It's Owen Jones. Young, boyishly cutie patootie Owen Jones, who's, in addition to being boyishly cutie patootie, he's an astute observer of British politics and a firebrand. He's not an astute observer in a distanced intellectual sense. He very much cares, and he has a YouTube channel where he does live streams with guests and whatnot. But he also does occasionally more considered quasi-documentary videos that I've praised on this channel before. They're fantastic, just fantastic. And he did one just recently, I'll leave a link to it, called Boris Johnson Should Be Arrested, in which he lays out the case that Boris Johnson, as Prime Minister of the UK, knew perfectly well what was happening. He was not blindsided by COVID-19, any more than Donald Trump was. Donald Trump knew in December and was told in January and February, this is the thing that will define your presidency. Gear up for it. Handle it right. Here's how you handle it right. But in Owen Jones's video, he makes the case that Boris Johnson knew ahead of time and that tens of thousands of dead people can be laid directly at his doorstep. It's a telling video. It's worth watching, especially if you're in the UK. I feel certain if you're in the UK, you're going to agree with Owen Jones. One way or another, I'll leave a link to it. But then we'll move to BookTube, the allegedly more peaceful precincts of BookTube. I have a few videos that I want to tell you about before we get on to books. One is by Matt, the Paperback Junky, who has returned to us all, and who did a video responding to a few things that he saw about content warnings, trigger warnings, what they are, what he thinks about them, what are the pros and cons. I love this discussion. I think it's fantastic. I hope it goes widespread on BookTube. I have a whole bunch of opinions on the subject myself, but not to upstage the Paperback Junky. You should go. I'll leave a link to his video. You should go and watch and see what you think. Then Rick MacDonnell, a while ago, did a thing called BookTube Spin, in which he invents a way to totally randomize everybody's TBR and then sort of spin a metaphorical wheel to figure out what those books are going to be. And it was a hit. I saw so many people enjoying that, and plenty of people emailing me saying, you know, this is really enjoyable. What do you think of it? It looked like a whole lot of fun. And he has revived it for round 2. I'll leave a link to his video where he announces the winners, where it seems like a lot of fun. A lot of you have been asking me with BookTube Spin last time, the first time that you did it. A lot of you were emailing me and asking me, you know, why don't you join in? And I had to explain my reason for that. A few people said, you know, is it because you don't like Rick? No, it's not because I don't like Rick. It's because my TBR is not random, obviously. A number of you wrote also to say to tell me, I know this is why you're not doing this, because you can't. I can't randomize my TBR. I wouldn't do it anyway, but or not so much. I don't think I would do it so much anyway, although it does look like a lot of fun. But 9/10 of my TBR is new release books where the reading is dictated by the release date. So I can't take part in BookTube Spin, but it looks like a lot of fun, and I'm going to enjoy watching the videos that come from the TBR. Then Tom LA Books he's our guide through the Divine Comedy of Dante, and he has reached the 32nd canto of the Inferno, which those of you who maybe know the Inferno, it has some of the cantos in the Inferno are a little bit easier going than others. This one has a standout moment. If you read the Inferno, let's say just in English, and you don't know anything about it, and you're just reading along trying to keep your head above water, there's an event that happens in Canto 32 that is going to strike you as odd. And Tom is right on it. I'll leave a link to his videos. It's terrific. And, you know, if this link to his video is your introduction to his guide through the Divine Comedy, do yourself a favor. Set aside a couple of hours and watch a bunch of the back videos, and then subscribe and keep watching, because you're never going to find a better guide through the Commedia than these videos. Oh, and then the last BookTube event is the return of Jason Harrigan, who's had, as he puts it, more comebacks than Elvis. He is a great booktuber. He has had a number of different channel names. He's left and come back, left and come back. He is a card-carrying foundational member of the OGBG, the Old Geezers book group, and something of a soulmate to myself and Mark Richardson, and he has returned to BookTube. His new channel is called Black Sheep Books. And he announced it on Instagram because he's such a zillennial, I swear. He is, and he in his first video, he no sooner turns on the camera than he's talking about hitting his macros for the day, like he was David Lade. Is Jason Harrigan our David Lade? I don't know. He doesn't have as much hair as David Lade, and he doesn't ripple in the way that David Lade does. But nevertheless, we could do worse. We do regularly do worse. So I thought I would leave a link to his new channel. Quite a few of you over the last few months have emailed me saying, I know you're friends with Jason. What has happened to his channel? It's not just that he stopped making videos, but he took all his videos down. What's going on? You know, is he okay? That sort of thing. And, you know, in a situation like that, you don't want to presume on someone's privacy. I made sure to tell people that he wasn't dead. But other than that, the most that I could fairly say is that not everybody wants to make 6 videos on BookTube every single day. Not everybody wants to do that. And he hit a period where he didn't. And who knows, he may hit that period in the future. I'm hoping that he doesn't nuke his channel. I much prefer the Mark Richardson approach, which is that if you don't feel like making a BookTube video this week, you don't make a BookTube video this week. You don't do anything with your older videos. And you don't make any, you know, ringing proclamations nailed to the door in Württemberg. You just don't do it for a week, and your subscribers aren't going to leave you. They're going to be interested the next time you post something. I'm hoping that it's that way. But one way or another, he's back, and right away he's hauling out endlessly interesting books, just endlessly. He's one of those booktubers who just read 1 million books, so you never know what you're going to hear, and it's always interesting. And he has the gift for gab. Let's just put it that way. Jason doesn't script his videos. Anyway, I'll leave a link to his new channel. Some of you don't follow. I'm assuming most of you don't follow him on Instagram, and might not go on, into his bio on Instagram to find the link to his channel. So you might not know. There won't be anywhere for you to go from because he nuked his older videos. And you should go and subscribe because he is the real deal. Then we'll get to books, and then we'll finish this up. We'll finish up with just a few books that are on my mind recently, recent reads. One of them is something we saw just yesterday. It was Becoming a Londoner, the London Diaries of the author David Plant. I had only read bits and pieces of this thing before. I found a copy at the Brattle. I read it yesterday and loved it. Just loved it. What a book. Amazing and funny and sad, and with anecdotes that, honestly, about famous people. He knew so many famous people, and there are anecdotes in here that I've read nowhere else, and I don't for a minute doubt him. I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. Then there was a book called While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams, who's widely known in America as a kingmaker. She is an organizer par excellence for political campaigns, and is largely responsible for Georgia turning blue, for Georgia, the state of Georgia, sending radical liberal Raphael Warnock and cutie patootie John Ossoff to Congress. I mean, they did a lot, and my beloved Beto O'Rourke did a lot, but it was Stacey Abrams that made that happen, and she is a genius at it, just a genius at political organizing. But she also somehow found the time to write a novel in the midst of that called While Justice Sleeps. And I was cringing when I got the file because I was just assuming it would be terrible, but it's not. It's actually quite good. Now I'm starting to wonder if there's nothing this young woman can't do. It could be that there's nothing she can't do. But one way or another, there was that, and then there was a trio of books that I read. I think they're all coming out really soon. I pop them down like popcorn. They're beach books. I've mentioned on this channel before, beach books that aren't so much just lightweight books that you pack to bring to the beach, but that are books about being at the beach. They're very much designed for summer vacations, for summer reading. There's a handful of authors that do them really, really well, and it just so happens that 3 of them are doing it at the same time. Nancy Thayer did Family Reunion. Mary Alice Monroe did The Summer of Lost and Found. And Mary Kay Andrews, the queen of beach reads, did a book called The Newcomer. The Newcomer is the funniest one of the 3, but they're all wonderful. They're all exactly what you want for a beach read with a tote bag and a towel and whatnot. I myself don't do beach reads at the beach because I am 100% of Irish descent on both sides, going all the way back to Brian Boru. Which means when I'm in strong sunlight, I skip the tanning and sunburning stage and go straight to gigantic purple boils. Prolonged exposure to bright sunlight and I do not get along, so I don't do that. But nevertheless, I love the books. So I'll list them down below. They're all 3 recommendations. If you like beach books, you're going to love these 3 books. Absolutely love them. And that's it. That is your MegaStuff video for today. A whole bunch of grim stuff, but some fun stuff as well. So I will leave all the appropriate links, and I will post this as soon as I can. I will try not to forget. I always laugh. I always remember Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading on a Voxer message once. She had things to say on a different subject. Then she ended her Voxer messages by saying, "Don't forget to upload," because I often do forget to upload until the very last minute. I'm still a bad booktuber after all this time. Anyway, that's your MegaStuff video. Who knows when there will come another, but I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.